Welcome to Mental Performance Unleashed with Emily Heird.
Hey everyone, welcome back to an all-new episode of Mental Performance Unleashed with Emily Heird. I'm your host, Mike Leon. Emily here is a licensed psychotherapist and certified mental performance mastery coach who's been helping attorneys and high-performing professionals build that mental fitness systems that elite athletes rely on. Today's episode, we're going to be diving into what elite performers measure that everyone else ignores. Athletes, they track dozens of performance metrics, but what should cognitive athletes be measuring? Emily's going to walk us through her mental performance assessment framework, the 10 pillars of mental performance mastery, and what high performers have discovered when they actually measure their mental fitness. Emily's going to break this all down. I'm excited to hear about this because I've seen the assessment over on your website. We're going to get into that in just a second, but it's good to see you, Emily, as always. So I mentioned the comparables here with athletes and high-performing professionals. Athletes do track dozens of performance metrics. I've worked in athletics and sports for a long time. What should cognitive athletes be measuring, and why aren't they measuring it?
Yeah, it's great to be together again, Mike. That's a great question. So, again, like you said, athletes track everything. They rely on their data for a lot of information to be able to make decisions, adjust training, and be at their best for performance. But professionals, we tend to measure things like billable hours, numbers of deals closed, revenue, but they're not measuring actual performance capacity that drives those outcomes. There are a few in the work world, like engagement scores, things like that. But on an individual level, lots of people are not tracking things like how many high quality decisions can I make before my judgment deteriorates? How long can I maintain deep focus before I need recovery? Or even simply, how long can I focus on a task before I get distracted by something? What is my current stress level? What's my baseline stress level? What is my stress response pattern? And how quickly do I return back to baseline? How sustainable is my current operating pace? So when a lawyer's performance drops, typically they just assume things like, well, I just need to work harder. I need to be more productive. I need to be more disciplined and push through. They're not really systematically measuring things around energy management, recovery, and sleep. And so there's no way to see what's actually happening. We can't really change and improve what we don't measure. So getting that baseline assessment of where you are when we start is an important piece of the component to the mental performance training.
Well, let's talk about the assessment that you just mentioned. So walk us through what you're actually assessing when you start to evaluate someone's mental performance and what are the key domains?
Yeah, so the assessment, it asks a variety of questions, and it's also tailored to if you have a leadership role. So how your performance is not only as an individual, but as a leader of a team. And if you don't have a team, that's okay, but that is integrated into the assessment. So the 10 domains that we are looking at. The first one is elite mindset. So this is, how you view things, how you think about things. Are you training your mindset, or is it pretty fixed at this point? The second one is around motivation and commitment. What fuel do you rely on when things get hard? And are you building systems that can help you maintain a commitment to a long-term goal? The third one is focus and awareness, something that every single one of my clients struggle with, and I have to train my focus muscles every day myself because there are so many distractions and things pulling for our attention, and our attention span has generally been shortened. The next one is self-control and discipline. So this is all around emotional regulation, being in control of yourself in difficult situations and high-stakes situations, and especially when the pressure is high. And then discipline is really the idea of being able to execute and do things even when you don't necessarily feel like doing them. The fifth pillar is around focusing on process over outcome, controlling the controllables, focusing on our daily actions that are going to get us to the long-term goal. The sixth one is around mental imagery and meditation. So this is really a training tool to train things like staying calm under pressure, visualizing success, building confidence. There are a ton of applications to mental imagery and meditation. The seventh one is around routines and habits of excellence. This is all around energy management, recovery, and setting up routines for success rather than winging our overall well-being. There are three more. The next one is around time management and organization. The number 9 is on leadership. So how are you able to get the best out of other people on your team? Not micromanaging, delegating, all of those components that go into leadership. And then the last one is culture. So this is important for teams and firms, no matter the size of the firm, but the environment dictates how people treat each other, how they respond to adversity, their levels of engagement and well-being and mental health, and ultimately the baseline performance for the business.
Emily, let me ask you, because things are running through my head right now as you just laid out those 10 pillars. I'm sure there's blind spots for some of the respect to some of the things there on the pillars. So what are those blind spots that kind of show up most often when these high performers, they first complete that mental performance assessment?
Yeah, so typically I see a couple of common blind spots. One is around recovery and boundary setting and energy management. The high performers are really good at setting goals, doing the work, putting in the time, and pushing through. They're disciplined when it comes to that. They're capable, but they've never been trained on how to recover. They've never been trained on the energy management piece of things. And so that's often a blind spot. They think that recovery is doing nothing. And then there's often connotations with that come along with, well, if I'm doing nothing, either I'm lazy, or if I take my foot off the pedal, then everything is going to fall apart. So they haven't learned how to either build their capacity or restore their capacity. Another one is around the leadership piece of things. The assessment really highlights your leadership patterns if you are jumping in and doing things for your team rather than building their skills and building a high-performing team. And it illuminates stress response patterns in times of, like, when you're up against a deadline and your team is underperforming. Like, that's usually a blind spot for people, because most of the time people are promoted into leadership. They don't get a lot of leadership training and they're just kind of winging it. So they don't do a lot of reflection on their leadership style. But once we see these patterns and once we get the data, then we can start making a plan to change things.
Emily, can I ask you to differentiate for us, like how is measuring mental performance kind of different from tracking productivity metrics or even outcomes?
Yeah, so it's a little bit tricky because, again, like, a lot of times these are things that we can't see. So if someone was training for a marathon, or I have one client who's training for an Ironman right now, he follows a very specific plan. He can see over time that he can ride his bike further in the same amount of time, or he's not as tired over the same distance. So he's building up his endurance. Those are a little bit more tangible. And productivity is a very tangible thing. So it's a little bit more challenging to track these mental performance metrics. But, it's looking at things like, what is your baseline stress level? Are you at a 10 right now? Okay, well, if we work on A, B, and C in 3 weeks, are you at an 8 now? Or that same client that I mentioned who's training for the Ironman, one skill we really worked on was overthinking. So we can now see in his efficiency how much work he's getting done each day and his ability to stay on top of his work because he's not spending so much time overthinking and in decision paralysis, which the underlying driver of that is perfectionism and some other things for him. So we're looking at, is the quality of your decision-making declining over time? How close are you to burnout? Whether you can sustain this pace for another year or 5 years or a career, which is very different than just numbers on a sheet at the end of the day.
Emily, when someone takes this mental performance assessment, what have you found that they're learning about themselves that they maybe couldn't see before?
it puts words to what they're experiencing. Most of high performers kind of operate on a gut feel, like I think I'm pretty good at managing stress, or maybe I know I need to be managing my stress better. I'm struggling with work-life balance. I know I'm not sleeping as well as I could, but they don't have a granular picture of what is not only leading to that experience, but what can be improved, what specifically needs to be improved. So the assessment shows them where they actually stand across all these different pillars, not just where they think they are. It shows gaps that they didn't know existed in things like energy management, recovery, boundary setting, things like that. And then, like patterns that they can't see from inside the system. Maybe they understand intuitively that they struggle a little bit in the afternoon, or I'm fine until I have a tight deadline, and then things kind of unravel, but they don't know like why that is happening. And so that's what this mental performance assessment helps illuminate. And it's objective. It's not someone just saying you should take better care of yourself, you should manage your stress better. It is saying, if you start practicing, if you start working on your mindset in this specific area, over the next 30 days, and we recommend 5 to 10 minutes of training, then you will see an improvement in that area.
Just like in sports, right? You got to do something with the data to get better for the next game. So, staying in that framing, like, how do you take the assessment data, create a training plan? You kind of gave a little bit of the inclinations there, but what does that systematic mental performance training actually look like in practice for the person?
Yeah. So when we first start working together, whether they've done the free assessment on my website or not, I give them a more comprehensive mental performance assessment to give us even more granular data for each of the pillars. I also, if it's appropriate, I give them a burnout inventory to see where they are on that scale of burnout. So I take all of that data. We explore. I have them talk about what their ideal vision for their life and their career is. So we're matching like where they want to be with where they are, and we're looking at what I'm looking for as a coach is to help map out that plan for how are we going to get to where you are to where you want to be. And with that data, I can see, okay, maybe focus is a really low score. And so I might start training the focus muscle first, because that's going to have a bigger effect on, or an effect on, productivity and being able to get your work done quickly. Or I might see that, recovery is down, sleep is down, there's no fuel. So from my perspective, if we focus on sleep protocols, nutrition, energy management first, and improving fuel and reducing stress a little bit, that's going to have a bigger downstream effect. So it is completely tailored to the individual, where they are in their data and where they want to go. And then I map out the phases that we are going to work on. This also includes things in their business like time management, organization, systems. So it all comes together. And then we work through that plan. I have one client right now who I wrote out a mental performance plan where he has his daily protocols he needs to be doing in the morning, kind of throughout the day, and then when he closes down his work for the day. And then on a weekly cadence, he has some visualization exercises and some reflection exercises. So that's his training plan in his binder that he keeps.
Emily, let me ask you as we wrap here on this episode. So let's say someone's taken the assessment, they've discovered the gaps. Can you kind of explain the difference between them trying to fix it themselves versus working with a mental performance coach?
Yeah, so this is a common thing. It's not really the absence of information out there. We have so much access to information. There's all kinds of YouTube videos. There's all kinds of books and articles on these very topics. And so one path would be to continue to go at it by yourself. The hardest part is prioritizing it, knowing what to work on, having that accountability, being able to carve out a little bit of time to do this on top of the existing work demands. And then the benefits of working with a coach are that you have an external perspective. As an expert in mental health and performance, I can see patterns that you can't see from inside your own system. And I can help you uncover mindset blocks and core beliefs that are really holding you back, that most of the time my clients have no idea were actually in their mind and driving their performance. So it's like, I use an analogy. It's like a golfer going on YouTube and watching shows on how to improve their swing, on how to improve their chipping, for example. Yeah, you're going to learn a little bit of technique, but it's a completely different experience when you are on the putting green with a chipping coach who can correct your technique in real time, who can respond to those negative comments that you have or the self-doubt that you have. So that's a difference, customization, and you're just generally going to get to where you want to go faster if you work with someone who's there to help you and support you in achieving your goals.
Well, as a 7 handicap, I get that reference a lot, Emily. So thank you. Thank you so much for the time, the insights, and breaking this all down as always, Emily. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
That's it for today's episode of Mental Performance Unleashed with Emily Heird. We explored and discussed the 10 pillars of mental performance mastery and what becomes visible when you actually measure your mental fitness like an elite athlete. So before you go, do me a favor. If you want to connect with Emily and her team, visit vantageviewcoaching.com. And if you want to take that mental performance assessment, it's also available at vantageviewcoaching.com/assessment. It's free. It's going to take about 10 minutes. You'll get the immediate results showing you where you stand across all 10 pillars, plus the specific areas where you're leaving performance on the table. One more favor before you head out the door: like, subscribe, leave a review, comment, share the episode with someone who needs to hear it. I am Mike Leon. We will see everybody next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.